Hello, everyone. I'm here with John Deaton, who is running for Senate in the U.S. Senate in Massachusetts. Super excited. John, as everyone knows, is very familiar to the crypto industry, but he's come from humble origins and he served in the Marines, was a trial lawyer, and has worked really hard for the people. And so now he's bringing that to the field. Thank you very much, John, for being on our show.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure. It's been too long. It's been too much of a minute since I saw you last.
I know it's been 2 years since we talked. I couldn't believe it. Hey, I was listening to an interview of Senator John Kennedy, who's quite a character,
Yeah.
hopefully a friend of yours. And he said that he ran for Senate 3 times before he got elected. And I thought, that's kind of the way it is in
I'm not
politics.
doing that.
You 2 times is good enough for you.
Yeah, two times is good. But no, it's tough. Last time, what people got to understand, it was February 1st, and no one was stepping up to challenge Warren. And, it just bothered me that she wouldn't be challenged at all. And even though I've been a lawyer in Massachusetts for 25 years, and the crypto world knew me, regular people in Massachusetts didn't know who I was. So I'm a no-name candidate. And I said, screw it. Her bill would ban the self-custody of Bitcoin. She wanted to ban crypto. I said, you know what? I'm gonna challenge her. I'm someone who knows what poverty is. She pretends to care about poor people. Her policies hold them down. Let's do this. And I announced 19 days later on February 20th, only 10 months before the election, and I got my butt kicked as a first-time candidate, but I was the first Republican against an incumbent in Massachusetts to get over 40% in like 40 years. I had 1.3 million people vote for me. I had limited funds. I had a contested primary, and it's late in Massachusetts. The primary is September. When you count early voting, it only gives you a month. And, after the primary, I had 800 grand left. She had 23 million, plus she's Elizabeth Warren, right? So success is relative. I outperformed expectations. And this time I didn't even know if I'd run again, but some people wanted me to run. They paid for a poll, and the poll surprised me. The poll showed me beating Markey by 2 points, and it's one poll. Doesn't mean that much in the grand scheme of things, but no poll ever showed me coming close to Elizabeth Warren. So that sort of got things happening. And then I got a huge endorsement from the Mass GOP, which means basically I won't face a primary. So, and Markey is tied up in a primary with Seth Moulton. So they're going to be fighting each other, spending millions all the way to September. I get to talk to disenfranchised Democrats, independents, the 1.1 million crypto holders in Massachusetts, people who are tired of a guy who's been in DC since 1976.
Wow. Right? I was still in high school.
Right. I was like his first year in Washington. I was like 8 years old. So I think we got a real shot, and I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully it's 2 times, not 3.
Well, I'm really excited about your campaign because in the 2024 election, we really saw that the political mindset has really changed a lot. Who people identify the Democratic Party as and how they see the Republican Party has changed a lot. And, states that were all blue before, maybe that's not that solid. And, the fact that you had such significant, 40% support during the 24 election goes to indicate that the forces of politics are changing. The messages is changing. Now, you have an interesting story, John. You came out with a book 2 years ago about being the food stamp warrior. How about your humble origins? I guess when you were a child, you guys lived on food stamps for a time, and then you worked your way up. I mean, it's a really great success story. You were a Marine and became a lawyer, and now here you are running for Senate. Tell me what about that journey in your life transforms you and makes you an excellent senator for Massachusetts?
Well, no, that's a great question. It's because I understand the struggle that people are going through. And I think it's time that we elect one of us to the U.S. Senate. People, somebody who understands, you're right. I grew up a single mother on welfare and food stamps, deadbeat dad who abandoned us. I was living in it's ranked the top 5 worst neighborhoods in America for 50 years. It's one of the most single worst neighborhoods you could live in. I had a gun shoved in my mouth first day of high school. I was a high school dropout. Unfortunately, a child predator for 2 years did things that no child should experience and threatened to kill my mother if she found out. Some really bad stuff. But the point is, I lived in an era, despite those disadvantages, where we lived in the greatest country in the world, that someone like me, you know, a place where your birth doesn't have to dictate your destiny, a place where your circumstances of your childhood don't have to dictate how you end up in life. And so when you think of me, even though I'm not like the wealthiest person in the world, I've done well for myself, but I'm no billionaire or anything like that kind of success story. But I am the embodiment of the American dream and what's capable in a great country if you have economic freedom and opportunity. And I see that dream becoming more and more unattainable. And I do question, Clinton, like, could I accomplish today what I accomplished back then? Or is it become so hard? Has it become so expensive, for example, to do that? And I just want to make sure that I'm not the last generation of poor kids who has an opportunity to live in such a great, country. And people are turning to socialism because our system hasn't been working for them. So, I always said, when I announced, I said, listen, let's not just call someone like Mondami names, right? Let's try to understand, why is he resonating with these young people? Like, his plan's never going to work, right? Grocery stores owned by the government's not going to work. Socialism is never going to work. But why is it so attractive? And it's because regular people haven't been participating in real capitalism. And I think we need a revival in this country. I would remind people, I'd tell them to look up the Gilded Age and look up what Teddy Roosevelt, a Republican, did when he came in and he bust the trust and took on the oil barons and railroad tycoons. And I'm someone who says we never want to punish success. But if you look at our healthcare system, Clinton, you have 3 vertically integrated companies that control over 90% of the provider insurance networks and over 85% of every prescription drug in this country. That's not real capitalism to me, right? Real capitalism to me would be increased competition. Increased competition brings down prices. Let's not just benefit, a few of these major conglomerates. And so I think we need to institute some real, basic reforms in our system to revitalize capitalism. That's my dream. That's my vision. And I'm going to release some pretty bold ideas after the holidays.
Okay. Hey, I think you're right on the money. There are a lot of financial problems, and it's because one of the problems with socialism is that there is a way that you can get these services, but it's the government's way, that there's no other options. And when we look at healthcare as a perfect example, we went to this Obamacare method back in 2010, and here we are, which with a healthcare system that doesn't serve people, far less than it ever did back in 2010. I was just checking statistics. The average time for wait to go see a general practitioner in Massachusetts is like 40 days. And if you're a brand new patient, you just moved to Massachusetts, which I know most people are leaving Massachusetts, but
Yeah.
you moved to Massachusetts, the average wait time is 95 days. That's not healthcare.
It's not.
You're on the internet looking for solutions. You're not dealing with, this is where it's driven us. And this is obviously a problem that I think the Senate is all at the federal level really is looking at. How do we make big changes? Because Obamacare has not done it right now. And this is going to be the big discussion, I think, for the next 2 to 4 years.
No,
What
you're right.
ideas do you bring to that? I mean, the monopoly is one idea, but there's a lot of
Oh,
components to this.
oh yeah. Listen. Well, think about this for your viewers. Right now, if Clinton or I needed a microwave or a refrigerator, we could go online and we could shop different prices, different brands of microwaves and refrigerators from all across the country. We could spend hours comparing prices. Try doing that for life-saving drugs. Can't do it. You can't do it. There's no transparency in our government. You cannot go and compare prices. So we have to institute transparency. Why does Medicare, which is the number one, vendor of drugs and prescriptions, how come they're not allowed to negotiate with these prices? You have three PBMs that control 90% of everything, and they're vertically integrated. They're putting independent pharmacies out of business. And so we can institute transparency, and we can break up those three monopolistic companies, increase competition. Here's an example. You should be able to know what the cash price is. For example, a cash price for a delivery of a baby is around $5,500, but go through insurance, is $37,000. Why is that? Right? I'm just saying, like, so we can institute. I'm not going to pretend, Clinton, that it's an easy fix, but it doesn't take rocket science. If we implement common sense, we implement full transparency, and we increase competition, then we can solve some of this. You know what I mean? A lot of it, in my opinion. But you're right. And Markey, my opponent, he's going to say the same thing: Medicare for all, Medicare for all. Just like he'll say Green New Deal for energy. These are plans that are never going to work. They're fantasy, fairy tale plans sprinkled with unicorn dust. That's never going to happen. And so we need somebody to go in there that says, let's roll up our sleeves, let's implement common sense, transparency, and get this done.
Hey, look, energy is a great topic. Massachusetts has very high energy bills. You have to import about half of your energy from out of state. You had one nuclear reactor, and it's closed down several years ago. They're trying to go Green New Deal, but that's not addressing the high demand for electricity and energy. What are your proposals?
Well, first of all, you brought up nuclear. The fact that these people don't even consider nuclear is mind-boggling to me, because nuclear, we're not talking about Three River Island and Chernobyl, right? We're not talking about that kind. We're talking about SMRs, a 300 megawatt SMR, that's a small modular reactor, which can be built off-site. Just so people understand, we could put 4 of those strategically across the Commonwealth. And those 4 reactors, which are carbon free and run at 97% efficiency, could power 40% of the 2.8 million homes in Massachusetts that need energy. And so I would, obviously, the governor here has banned new gas pipelines, and they force alternative energy mandates that are crushing working families. Listen, I believe climate change is an issue. I don't believe Massachusetts can solve it, when our yearly carbon emission is equal to less than 2 days of China's carbon emissions. So I don't think we should punish our businesses and our taxpayers by pretending that we're going to be, net zero neutral by 2050, and everybody's already paying double electricity prices. We just got to have common sense. So mine would include hydro from Canada over the Berkshires. It would include nuclear. It would include, I'd stop with this offshore wind nonsense that's ruining our oceans and killing our commercial fishermen industries. I'd go with, obviously, some onshore wind where appropriate and solar where appropriate. And you can implement a multifaceted approach that reduces prices. And you can do it a lot cheaper than we're paying today.
That's a great plan. One of the challenges in Massachusetts is affordability. I mean, Massachusetts has the highest cost of living of almost any state in the country, and is continuing to go up. And along with the challenges of healthcare, energy, as we just spoke about, how, and I know housing's also been a big issue. I'm not sure how much you can address that at a federal level, but how can you help the average working family just trying to get by? What can you make a difference? Why should they vote for John
Well,
Deaton?
that's the absolute best question that people can ask, because you're right. Just so people understand how on point you are, because you've already said, or a few minutes earlier, that people are leaving Massachusetts. So 200,000 people in the prime of their working life in the last few years have left. 200,000. Prime of their work. That's our tax revenue for the future, leaving the state forever. At the same time, we brought in tens of thousands of illegal migrants that cost $4 billion. So we have a housing problem. I'm going to release a housing plan federally. One of my plans is going to be 5 million homes in 5 years. One thing we can do is use federal land that's not being used by like military bases, and we can partner with developers to develop that at either very low cost or even no cost, because cost of land is one of the barriers. The second barrier to entry in housing is these over regulations. For example, the alternative energy mandates. Affordable housing is not being built in Massachusetts because the mandates say you can't tap into natural gas pipelines, that it has to be electric. Well, we're already paying double the electric price of national average. So again, expanding our natural gas as one element, and along with the other energies that I talked about, that's going to reduce cost. The energy cost here is probably right now the number one cost outside of housing that we're looking at. So if we solve the housing crisis and implement common sense energy prices, those two things alone will make Massachusetts more affordable.
You have supporters all across the nation because you have a reputation from before you got into politics. And how can people support you? How can they give to your program? How can they learn about what's happening? Because people see that Massachusetts and New York have an inordinately large influence on what goes on in the House and in the Senate. It's incredible how it's so localized. How can and you coming in will start to change that. How can they get involved with what you're doing?
Oh, that's great. John Deaton for Senate. Listen, I know it's a cliche, and I'm going to be honest with everyone out there. Last year, I sucked as a candidate in one area. I mean, I made other mistakes in other areas. I'm not saying I didn't. But the one area I sucked the most at was asking for money. Because, and I'll tell you why, Clinton. Once the other guys made the primary ballot, and our primary is September, as I went over it, I knew my chances of winning were slim to none. Like I knew it. I still worked my butt off. I did everything I could. But when you know that you probably can't win, it's uncomfortable to ask people for money to begin with. Number two, my life, I've never asked for help that much, so that makes it even more uncomfortable. But then when you know you can't win, probably it makes it even harder. Well, I want everybody to know that I'm over that, because I can win this race. So I need them to go to johndeatonforsenate.com, and I need them to dig in their pockets and donate. If I can raise enough money to compete, I'm telling you, I can win this race. I don't have a primary. He does. He's going to be spending millions. Last time in the primary, he spent 16 million in the primary alone. I don't. And I got polling that shows I can win. So if they can go to John Deaton for Senate and donate, if they're in Massachusetts and they can volunteer, they go to my website, sign up for volunteering, help knock on doors. I think we're going to win this race. I think we're going to shock a lot of people.
That's going to be exciting. I'll just remind everyone, I was at the Bitcoin conference this past summer, and JD Vance came and spoke, and one of his final comments was to the crypto audience, was the Bitcoin audience primarily. He said, we need you to be involved in politics. We need to hear your voice. You need to fund us, because that's the only way things change. Because people with the money change what the politicians have to think about. So everyone, even people outside of Massachusetts, have a vested interest in seeing you get in and be the next senator in Massachusetts. So is there anything else you want to touch on that we didn't talk about real briefly?
No, well, listen, if digital assets are important to them, if innovation's important to them, Ed Markey voted against the Genius Act. He's going to vote against the Clarity Act. No doubt. He's one of the protectors of the big banks. He's, Jamie Dimon is in his pocket, to be blunt. And so if that's something that's important to him, one way to help get someone like me in office is donate. And clearly I'm pro innovation. I always will be. And at the same time, I'm all about protecting the consumer. And so we can get someone in there who understands that you want to protect people from fraud and bad actors, but foster innovation in a way that makes America, the most competitive that it can be. And let me tell you, when we foster innovation, guess what state does pretty well? Massachusetts. We got Harvard, we have MIT, we have Tufts, we have all kinds of biotech industry and other industries. So if we foster innovation in America, Massachusetts will do well.
John Deaton for Senate. Everyone, please check it out. Thank you for your time, John. It's been a real pleasure. Let's do it again.
Thank you. Looking forward to coming back and seeing you at one of these conferences in person.
All right, will do.